Hello everyone. This is a more advanced screencast. If this is your first time looking at Wakanda, you might look at other resources that would be more helpful for you. I wanted to cover some advanced architectural issues that I was facing and how I am and have solved them. Three mainly. I wanted a global search that could do a keyword search across many different data store classes. So I might have a contact, a lead, a property, and I wanted to do a keyword search that encompassed all of those data store classes in one result. The second thing I wanted an advanced permissions system based on roles rather than users, so I could have, an administrator role, and then if that administrator, the actual user, I could pop a new user in and out if my staff changed. And then I also wanted the permission system to allow fine-grained control by the actual entity, as well as wide-grained access control if I wanted to say this user can have all my permissions, and it could be set that easily. I also wanted a system that could have many accounts, different clients on my side on the same data store, same application, and not have data crossing over, sort of a subscription model where I could have different accounts and bill many people for the same application. So let's get into it. First, you can see here I have an account data store class. So that's per business. That's someone that I've sold my service to, and I've set up here perhaps an idea of a service package where it specifies the different levels of service that they've decided to pay for. And the name, and then a user, which is the owner of the account. Okay. This is a major portion of my permission system because I don't want one account seeing another account's data. So you'll see this as a fundamental place where I limit permissions. Next, I have a user data store class. And you can see that I have a roles data store class. These are going to work very closely together. In fact, I've set up a many-to-many. Each user can have many roles, and each role might have many users. Essentially, the user class is going to determine the access level to the application. The directory, I'll show you the directory I've got set up here. Hold on. So in the directory, all I've set up simply is groups. This one can go. I've set up groups that might be different typical access levels: client, user, admin, account owner, and then from my company, an employee who would have access to add and delete accounts, and then maybe even a public, someone coming from the complete public. Maybe I have something that I promote on a website, so this would provide me the ability to do that. So the users and roles, essentially I've got a many-to-many. Users determines which groups they are in. As you can see here, that's going to be most of the security I use. So the account I've limited to read, which is my employee, create my employee, update. I'll let the account owner update many aspects of their account, so I set that. Take, for instance, the user data store class. A good example here was a user can read it, so they can see what other users are in their account. But to create, update, or remove, you have to be an account owner. And let's take where else did I set them? Okay, we'll get into permission objects more later. So anyways, users determine the access to the application by using the directory and groups. You'll see here what I'm doing is a hybrid approach. So to create a new user, I don't use something like a DS new user. I do the add new user method, and in this method, I'm going to make sure that I add the user to the directory as well. So when I add a user entity and save it, I'm going to use this method, and that will make sure that the directory gets a new entry as well. When I'm removing a user, I'll go to events here to on remove. So here I'm going to make sure that they get removed from the directory, and those two elements there, using the method only to add and using the on remove event, will make sure that my directory stays in sync with my data store class. Okay, let's move over to permissions a bit. Okay, so permissions. I have two types of permissions I've set up. Some people want fine-grained and some people want wide-grained, for lack of a better term, control. User permissions, the idea here is that I can say, I'm Greg the user, and I want to give this user, say Becky, all the permissions that I have. So this is a quick way to say this user gets my permissions, done. So user permissions has an applied to user and a given by user, and then an access level. So you can maybe assign them read level access, write level access, etc. Object permissions, this is going to attach to a role. Okay, so object permissions are based on the role. So this is going to be a specific entity, maybe a contact. It's going to nail it down to the permission object, which role has access to it, and what the access level is. So this is going to allow you to assign specifically to an entity who can do what to it. So this is sort of the very fine-grained specifying permissions by the entity. It applies to a role, so you could have two administrators. You could have a user that was your administrator and they've left your company. Now they come into, you put a new user into that role, and everything just works tickety-boo because you've based it all on roles, not on users. Now the user permissions, it's actually based on roles as well, because the way this would work logically is when a user requests data, it would go check the user permissions, it would find the user's roles, and then go into the roles permission. So, but you need to attach it to a user because a user may have more than one role. And I'm not sure I'm explaining that well, but user permissions will give you access to each of the given by users roles. So you could have access to more than one role. Okay, next. On that topic, I have here a user entity, which you may think is confusing. So there are times when maybe you want to assign a specific object to a user, not to a role necessarily. This is a way user is roles. So what I've done here is essentially you make a new role, and the role kind of is that user. It's a special use case, and you could filter by that. If user is null, then it's a generic role. Otherwise, it's specific to a user, and you could do a lot of neat things with that. Next topic is the global search. Now, as of the current release of Wakanda, you cannot have storage attributes in an extended data store class. So there's two ways you can go about this, and I've done a different screencast on global search and sort of explored the other possibility. I think there's pros and cons to both, but I've taken a different approach here. Basically, I'm creating a giant base table that has all the storage objects. It's not pretty. It's not the way I would like to do it. But this is going to allow me an easy conversion when they do allow storage objects in extended data store classes. So I've just done some private entities, Boolean entities, to help me stay organized here. But I've got all my common data here that's common to every different type of search object. So I've got different levels here. Search object is basically any one of these. It's a listing, it's a lead, it's a contact. So all of those have these data. Now a contact specifically has a first name and a last name, and a lead specifically has source, buyer, seller, referral. So the search object is where I'm keeping all of my storage attributes until I can have those moved to the specific classes. Permission object. This is extend search object. So I've got it inherits all of search object. This is specifically to limit the data down. So if we go into search object, the big thing here is the events on restricting query. And in on restricting query, I've just put some text of what I would do in here. This thing is not functional. There's a lot of work to be done to it. I'm trying to give you theory versus turnkey solution. So the steps you'd go through here is you'd first query by the account to make sure there's no account crossover. Then you would query by user permissions, find all the user permissions that this current user has access to, and combine them with a query on the object permissions. So you get all the user permissions, all the entities that match with that. You'd get all the permissions based on object permissions, and you'd combine those into a result, and that's what you would return. So the permission object filters everything down to what that user has access to. Now you'd need to reference back maybe on an input screen or on an on save to see what level of access they have, because we did specify the option to give them a certain access level, but you'd implement that in different places. Then I have the final level here, which is the actual data object, the contact itself, the lead itself, the listing itself. And at this level, what you can have is you can have relation attributes and you can have calculated attributes. So you can see here, just to demonstrate that, I've set up a lead can have many contacts. So I've created a many-to-many here between lead and contacts with this contact lead table. And then also, each lead can have a listing. So I've just created a regular relationship there. Now here's another interesting one I wanted to show you was, if I go to contact and I go to events and I go to on init, actually I'll go back to the model. What you'll see here is in permission object I have a on init permission object, and in search object I have on init search object. And what I want to do, I want to be able to filter my code based on where it's most applicable. So if I go to search object and I go, let's start from here, the on init with a contact. I've got this.type equals the data store class name. So this is going to categorize what type of data it is. That gets saved in the search object level. Then I'm going to call the permission object method, sending it this current element. So we go to the permission object. Let's find permission object. And the permission object on init is going to call the search object on init, passing the same entity down. And then the search object on init will do its work. What this allows you to do is it allows you to put the code where it fits best, and so you don't repeat yourself. For instance, on the save, if new, I'm doing the created at in the search object level because that's where it makes sense. Same with the modified at. However, in the on init of the contact, or sorry, on the on save, this is where I'm assembling the search text, because the search text will be different depending on whether it's a contact or whether it's a lead. So I'm running out of time here, but I just wanted to give you sort of an overview. I'm going to make this project, I'm going to attach it to the thread in the forum, so if you want to see it, you can get it there. And I hope it opens up an interesting discussion. Thanks a lot.